We're joined by UB Pravin Rao, an Infosys veteran, the COO of Infosys, and he's taken charge as the chairman of Nasscom in what is a very challenging time. Thank you so much, Pravin, for joining us on ET Now. Take us through what this role is going to mean for you in this unprecedented year. None of us have seen anything like it. How are you really approaching your role as chairman in 2020?
No, obviously, these are challenging times for the industry. However, the industry has faced similar situations in the past and has proven to be resilient time and again. And I'm very confident this time too, we will emerge stronger and wiser. And from my priority perspective, obviously, the immediate priority is to deal with this unprecedented COVID situation. So we have executed the first phase well in terms of enabling people to work from home, bringing in resiliency to our operations and so on. But now we need to start dealing with the post-COVID situation as well as it unfolds. And one of the things I strongly believe is for our industry, it's very important more than ever before to have very strong focus on building business resilience. And it's also equally important to continue to reinforce Indian technology industry as a trusted partner to global clients. So my immediate priority is making sure that we establish that. But once we probably get used to the new normal, I will continue my focus on all the other initiatives Nasscom has been doing in the last year or so in terms of transforming our industry to deal with today's digital era. This could be around skilling employees. This could be around expanding in the global markets. This could also be around solving and contribute to India's GDP growth and so on. So that would probably be later on. But initial focus is mostly on dealing with the current situation.
Right. So far, this is the time of the year when IT companies have clarity on client budgets. How has COVID really impacted all this? I mean, if you look at Accenture's example, they had one of the healthiest order books in the industry, but a few days back, they cut back on guidance because of, the uncertainty from this pandemic. So any clarity at all as far as IT budgets are concerned?
No, absolutely not. Obviously, this has impacted clients across industries and across countries as well. I mean, this is really a global impact. And clients are still coming to terms with it. This has impacted clients both on the demand side as well as on the supply side. I think they are still trying to grapple with it. Some clients have started taking some decisions around cutting discretionary spends and so on. But it's still early days. From an Nasscom perspective, we are still talking to the companies. My sense is it will take a few more weeks for getting better clarity on how the year will pan out. It will be a very challenging year, that's for certain, but the extent and all remains to be seen. It all depends on how quickly this lockdown will get lifted. It will also depend on how other countries also dealing with the situation and so on. So definitely a difficult year, but it will take a few more weeks for us to get our arms around it.
Right. So I just wanted to quickly clarify, you mentioned that some people are already cutting discretionary spend. Can you, give us some details? Is it, in terms of sectors or geographies or even the business segments where this is happening? Some clarity on this will be great. Some details perhaps on, where the first wave of cuts are happening.
Now, obviously, some of the biggest impact are with travel and entertainment, travel and hospitality, retail and CPG, oil industry. I mean, these are some of the sectors which are probably much more impacted than the others. So we have seen, I mean, these are again very early days. This is not a secular trend so far, but we have slowly started seeing some aspect of it. We have also started seeing some requests for deferred payment terms and so on, because companies are also struggling with the cash flows and things like that. So these are some of the things we have started seeing early days again. As I said, even some parts of manufacturing industries are also struggling. And in fact, the whole supply chain is actually broken in some sense. Even it started with China, which today probably contributes to 40% of the GDP from a supply chain perspective. So it's a combination of things. So I think as I said earlier, everyone is trying to deal with it, grapple with it, and what it means for them. But we have slowly started seeing some amount of cuts in discretionary spends or requests for deferred payment terms and so on.
Right. So also want to understand, as a veteran of the IT industry, someone who has spent specifically a lot of time in the retail CPG vertical, how does the current crisis compare with, 2008, the 2009 period? Because then there was hope that, the kind of disruptions that we saw in the financial services sector would mean opportunities for the IT industry. So for you, how does 2020 compare with 2009? I mean, they are completely different crises. This is nothing we have seen before. But in terms of patterns, in terms of behavior, any parallels that you can draw at this point?
I think overall, when you compare with the 2008 recession, I think the situation is in some sense fundamentally different. While the impact is probably similar, almost every industry is getting disrupted and so on. But at the same time, now we have now companies are actually started getting used to the new normal. They are now trying to come to terms with what is happening in their own industries. And every company now should focus on reimagining their own business model, making them more resilient, focusing on their supply chain issues, ensuring that they are able to enable remote work for their people and so on, because there is going to be a future. They're also focusing on making their organization agile so that they can react faster to pandemics of this kind in future and so on. So for all this, technology is a big differentiator. So from that perspective, we do anticipate in the short term there may be some cuts, but in the medium to long term there will be a lot more investment in technology. And in fact, I also believe that in some sense this is also a tipping point for digital transformation, because we will see now increased adoption of digital transformation, particularly from a workplace perspective.
Right. So I know you're running late, so I'm just going to take a few more minutes, on some critical questions, particularly with respect to jobs, because the IT industry is clearly the biggest private sector employer in the country. In fact, Nasscom in February said that 2 lakh jobs were added in FY20. Now, in the current scenario, what will this mean as far as hiring is concerned? There is already talk that, many companies may not even honor the offers they have given at campuses. That's clearly going to have a huge impact if you have engineers who don't have jobs in the current scenario. So just want to understand your thoughts on the hiring front. What exactly is happening right now?
See, overall, I mean, it's a reality, as I said earlier, that there will be an economic impact, and to some extent, it will impact the growth for the industry. Again, the extent it'll take few weeks to really figure out the extent of it. Now, if you look at the IT industry itself, it's a very diverse industry. There are few large players, but about 80% of the players are really people in small sectors, SMEs, people in startup community, BPM, mid-tier BPM companies, and so on. They are probably much more impacted than the large players because today in many of the BPMs or in the SMEs, about 30 to 40% of the workforce don't have jobs because they have not been enabled to work from home. So they'll be probably the most impacted in the short term. And for many of the smaller players, I think it's a choice between sustainability of business versus whether to keep employees or not. So Nasscom, from its perspective, at least for this segment, which contributes about roughly 50% of the industry revenues, Nasscom is actually working with the government and pushing them for giving some stimulus so that we don't see too much of job loss or anything. So that's one part of it. But even for the larger players, I think if this recession pans out and it lasts for a long period of time, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, at least definitely in terms of job additions. But most players, I think large companies, at least for a period of time, they have staying power, and many of them have already come back and talked about respecting all the offers they have made. I think some of the large companies at least have made that thing. So my sense is for offers already made, including freshers, most companies will probably honor it. There may be some delay in the joining dates, but I think the challenge will be more for smaller players, and unless they get stimulus from the government, it will be very tough for them to survive.
Right. Will we see companies perhaps, delaying the onboarding or perhaps extending the training that they usually give to freshers? These are some of the measures that we have seen during previous times, when there was a tough economic environment or a tough business environment. They would either delay the onboarding or perhaps extend the training period they give freshers. Do you increasingly seeing that happening, sir, at least among the top 10, say, recruiters of the industry?
I think for the freshers coming in, probably there may be some delay, I think, depending on how the business outlook will look like, the joining dates. But in the interim today, I think almost every company administers remote training and so on. So in the interim, I think there'll be a lot of effort in terms of improving the skill sets and making them production ready while they are still waiting for joining the companies. But for laterals, my own sense is whenever there's an opportunity for us to enable them on projects, we'll be onboarding them. Already I've seen many companies have started remote onboarding of laterals. Because for laterals, it is easy to onboard remotely and deploy them on projects. So it will be a mixture of things. But as I said earlier, my sense is most companies will honor whatever jobs offers they have made. But to some extent, particularly for freshers, there may be some delays in their joining dates.
Right. Just last couple of questions, sir. I also wanted to understand any projections so far on, how much this is going to hit growth or how much it is going to hit Nasscom's own projections for the industry going forward. I know it's a little too early, but any clarity that you have so far?
No, absolutely nothing. I mean, we have absolutely no clarity. It's a very difficult situation. Things are still evolving. Absolutely. I mean, there's no clarity, in fact, on when many of the countries will come out of lockdown. And so it really depends on extent. I mean, there are a lot of theories floating around: V-shaped recovery, U-shaped recovery, all kinds of things.
Right.
At this stage,
right.
Clarity.
Right. So I also wanted to understand, we've spoken about the challenges so far, but tell me about the opportunities, because I am hearing from analysts that companies in the healthcare and life sciences space, which work with drug makers, pharma companies, healthcare companies, perhaps there's a huge opportunity for IT companies in those areas. Can you tell us a little about this? Is this going to perhaps be a ray of hope amidst these dark times for the IT industry?
I think, as I said earlier, in the short term, there will be impact because companies are still trying to get their arms around it. But in the medium to long term, the IT will bounce back. I think there is probably something that will be different from what we saw in the recession of 2008. That's primarily because, as I said, almost everyone will start focusing on leveraging IT, because IT is now critical for anything they have to do with their supply chains, anything they have to do with building resilience. And I talked about transformation of workplace and so on. So we'll see a lot of opportunities towards migrating workloads to cloud, a lot of opportunities around building supply chain, transparency, visibility in supply chain. So there are tremendous opportunity, and it's not only in life sciences and pharma and healthcare, but even in other industries as well. So from that perspective, I think I'm very optimistic about the medium to long term. In the short term, I think you will see some bit of impact, but in the long term, it will bounce back.
Right. Last couple of questions, sir. Is this pandemic a reason also why Infosys has perhaps deferred its results? There is buzz about that because yours is the company that first reports results among the top nifty top companies. Is this one of the reasons why we are seeing a delay? I'm just curious about that.
I'm here as Nasscom chairman, not as Infosys.
Right. I just had to try my luck on that. But sir, coming back to this, a lot of people are also asking, the IT industry has invested so much in physical infrastructure, in setting up huge campuses. Some of them are owned, some of them are leased. IT companies perhaps have some of the best campuses in the country. With work increasingly moving remote, moving home, how is the future of work going to change for IT companies? Will some of these investments perhaps become redundant? Are we going to see a whole new change, a paradigm shift happening?
I think there'll definitely be some shift. There'll be a new normal and new ways of working. But some of these campuses will still be useful because there's still some amount of work from a security aspects where client would be more comfortable you working from campuses than working from office, working from home. But one of the things, even from a business continuity perspective, even clients would want to insist as part of the business continuity planning is people alternately working from office and alternately working from home. So you will see that more and more of it because, for instance, they may expect someone to work from office for 2 weeks and work from home for 2 weeks. So that you test the resiliency of the system and make sure that if in the event of such things happening in future, we have a very, very robust business continuity planning. So from that sense, I think there will be a new normal. There will be a new ways of thinking. I think more and more clients will be more open to work from home and other thing. But part of the campus will still be useful because you will still clients will still want to have some part of the work done, if possible, in the campuses and so on.
Right. And we've seen IT companies really step up in terms of contributions, whether it's Infosys Foundation, Wipro, other companies as well. Nasscom has made an AI course free during the term of the lockdown. What other initiatives can we expect from the IT industry going forward in order to counter this pandemic?
Yeah. No, I think all the companies in their own individual capacities have been working with both central government and with state governments, local corporations and others in terms of using technology to develop apps which help in patient tracking, quarantine tracking, and so on. Almost every company does that. And from a Nasscom perspective, we have created a task force under Nivrutti Roy, and we are working closely with MeitY and with Niti Aayog, and we want to come up with some solutions which are relevant to the government, because obviously we can everyone is coming up with a lot of solutions, but we want to make sure that we come up with solutions which are most critical from a government perspective. So this task force is working closely with MeitY and Niti Aayog to come up with solutions to counter this COVID. But otherwise, I've got tons of examples of where companies, both multinationals as well as Indian companies, have developed a lot of apps. And in fact, Nasscom has also published a compendium in their website of all the work that startups as well as SMEs and big companies are doing in this space.